So over the weekend was the 20th anniversary of the Xbox 360, the absolute GOAT of Xbox consoles. Forget about the Xbox Series and the generation that we're in right now. The Xbox 360 was the peak Xbox era, and I think most people can agree on that. I kind of sat down to decide what kind of video that I would make, because I did want to cover the 20th anniversary of the Xbox 360. And I had a basic script all figured out, but much of it I've already talked about in previous videos. In fact, last year I made a video when I was talking about the last days of the Xbox 360 store, and I didn't really want to repeat that stuff all over again. So just go ahead and watch that video if you're interested. The link is in the description below. So today I decided to make this video about the best thing about the Xbox 360, and that is the games. From the original launch in 2005 to the last ever games developed for the system in 2019, the system never let up. And what made the Xbox 360 so incredible is that it truly was a generational leap over the original Xbox. In this modern day of video games, when we talk about the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, or the Switch to the Switch 2, or the Xbox One X to the Xbox Series, the graphics and the generational leap just simply aren't there. We're talking more about a iterative or a revision rather than a true next generation. And I think that's fair to say that I think most people can agree on that. But the OG Xbox to the Xbox 360, or indeed the PS2 to the PS3, were some of the most massive leaps in technology that we had ever seen. Now, all the games that I'm going to talk about today are ones that really just resonated with me in some fashion, and I think a lot of you will agree with some of these as well. But as always, let me know what your favorite Xbox 360 games are in the description below. When it comes to the Xbox 360, the first game that really kind of made me sit up and look at the Xbox 360 and say, wow, this is a huge increase in terms of graphics, was Fight Night Round 3. Now, this game released in the Xbox 360's launch window sometime in February of 2006, just a few months after the launch of the system. And this was developed by EA Chicago, and this brought in or introduced the EA Sports HD era on the Xbox 360. And this was the shift to the high-definition visuals that supported 720p or 1080i. And this is all thanks to the unified shaders of the Xbox 360 that really kind of brought in that filmic realism that really just wowed players from the transition to the OG Xbox days. The film quality graphics, the poor level fighter models, the dynamic facial swelling, the bruising, the sweat, the blood physics. This was an incredible title. I'm not someone that is really big on sports titles, but this was a game that I picked up at launch when the Xbox 360 launched in Australia, and I absolutely was blown away by just the fidelity and the quality of this game. The Xbox 360 is the best port of Fight Night Round 3. There were versions of the game on the PS2 and the Xbox original, as well as a PS3 port, which did match it in terms of fidelity as well, but that came out much later. But Fight Night Round 3 was really the statement game for me that really kind of put Xbox 360 on the map for me to say, hey, this system is not messing around. This is a really powerful system in the right hands, and we're going to see some incredible games coming out for it, which is exactly what happened.
Flashy but solid all-around boxing skills. Yaddy connects with a looping hook.
Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare released in 2007 by Infinity Ward and Activision. Now, before COD 4, Call of Duty was a World War II style first-person shooter, which was getting a little stale, to be completely honest with you. Call of Duty 2, Call of Duty 3, a Big Red One, all these games that had come out previously were decent, but they weren't really that impressive, at least for me. They were mostly forgetful, and I didn't really have a great experience with any of them. But when Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare released, it changed everything. It brought in this cinematic intensity on the Xbox 360 with HD graphics, even though it was running at a lower resolution than 720p. I think it was around 600p, but the Infinity Ward 3.0 engine had things like bullet penetration and that silky smooth 60 frames per second, with just some incredible set pieces with the sniper stealth missions, the AC-130 gunship mission, the nuke shock mission. It just had this varied gameplay, and it just had amazing, amazing set pieces. And of course, the multiplayer revolution was all formed by Call of Duty 4. It brought in the progression system, the XP ranks, the create a class, the leaderboards, that addictive Call of Duty gameplay on multiplayer, which is still very much a part of the Call of Duty franchise to this very day. It scored a 94 on Metacritic with 15 perfect scores, and it really will just go ahead and define the Xbox 360 era for me as the top FPS shooter, up there with Halo 3 and Gears of War. And it's just an incredible game, which is still obviously going very strong to this day. And some people may have their favorites. Some people may prefer Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare 3 or Black Ops, but for me, this was the game that started it all. I remember seeing a television advertisement, and I couldn't believe what I saw on the TV. I was like, this is Call of Duty? This doesn't even look like a Call of Duty game. This looks like a advertisement for the Marines or for joining the military. And when I saw this, I was just completely blown away. I had to buy it. I ran out the next day and bought a copy of it. And I've just been in love with the Call of Duty franchise ever since. And everything started from COD 4. It is an incredible game. I always say that the very best video games are the ones that you never forget in terms of a particular set piece or something that happened in the game that you always think about and you always have some type of emotional attachment to. And for me, BioShock is one of those games. That very first sequence when you're in the water with the fire burning all around you was one of the most impactful and incredible set pieces that I can ever remember. The flames effect was just so lifelike and realistic that I'd never seen anything like it before in a video game. I was simply unaware at that point that graphics like that were even possible. And the game is an absolute technical marvel. The art style is just completely off the chain. I absolutely love the aesthetic of this game. Now, the game does run at a sub 720p resolution, which for at the time was kind of normal for these demanding AAA Xbox 360 games. And I think it uses a dynamic resolution that kind of sits between 512p and 720p with an approximation of around 600p at 30 frames per second. We have to remember, back in those days, 60 FPS games weren't really considered the target. It was really about good graphics and really pushing graphics first beyond anything else and really hitting a 30 FPS cap most of the time. BioShock was no exception. It also had HDR lighting, there was dynamic water effects, parallax mapping, and just take a look at this game. It still holds up incredibly well all these years later. Now, there are backward compatible versions and there are higher fidelity versions of this game that you can run. But going back and running this game on the original Xbox 360, this gameplay capture is just bringing everything back. It really did push the Xbox 360 to its limits. And of course, there were 2 additional sequels of this game that pushed the game even further in terms of fidelity and in terms of technology. But for me, the original BioShock is one of the very best games ever made. It's one of those games that I just continue to go back and replay over and over again. An incredible experience, and it has to be one of the most essential games on the Xbox 360, hands down. By 2015, the Xbox 360 was kind of well past its prime. Most people were moving on to the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, but there was still some magic left in the Xbox 360. And for me, Rise of the Tomb Raider is one of those games. This is the sequel to the 2013 reboot of Tomb Raider, which obviously is a game that features Lara Croft. But Nix's Software did the Xbox 360 port of this game, and I gotta be honest, I'm completely blown away by this port. This is a next generation game that ran on the Xbox 360 hardware, which at the time was 10 years old. And we're talking the Xenon CPU that released in 2005 and 512 megabytes of memory. The game runs at a native 720p with no dynamic resolution whatsoever. It supports FXAA with somewhat low-res textures and shadows, but it still looks incredible in motion. It targets that 30 FPS. The frame rate does tend to drop, obviously, when the action does get busy, but there are some scenes in this game that just look absolutely amazing. Now, of course, compared to the Xbox One and the PS4 version that did have advanced lighting, HDR, and things like that, on the Xbox 360 we have baked lighting and a lower polygon count. To mimic those effects, there's reduced geometry and foliage, and there is a very smart LOD system that has been introduced as well. And overall, there's been some corners that are cut, but if you look at this game running in action, this undoubtedly is one of the very best looking games on the Xbox 360. This is why I keep saying that the Xbox One to the Xbox Series, those types of generational, leaps were really just iterative in terms of graphics. If you go back and look at Rise of the Tomb Raider on the Xbox 360 and then run a version on the Xbox Series, for example, or the PS5, it's going to look extremely similar, other than, the frame rate, which is obviously going to be improved on a modern console. But Rise of the Tomb Raider for me is one of those showcases of fantastic technology that looks and holds up so well even to this day, and it's a very fitting swan song of the Xbox 360's domination for over 10 years. The Fable franchise has always been an interesting one for me. Promising so much and delivering some of the promises, its original iteration on the OG Xbox was a good game, but it really didn't reach the heights until Fable 2 on the Xbox 360 released in 2008. And Fable 2 captivated me with its charm and its amazing world of Albion, with the fairy tale aesthetics and the themes and the story of lost revenge and moral choices. Now, this semi-open world RPG had breathtaking environments for the time. You had the snowy bowerstone streets and the lush forests, and this was one of the first games that I remember that had consequences for every single action that you did in the game. It had a wide range of combat styles with melee, ranged attacks, and magic options. There was all sorts of side quests and missions that you could do. You were able to buy real estate in the game, and you could earn passive income, and it was really just a game that I think Fable 1 wanted to be, and critics and fans loved it. I think Fable 2 is Lionhead's best Fable game, much more superior to Fable 1, and definitely more superior to Fable 3, which I feel like just kind of lost its way a little bit. But for me, Fable 2 is one of the best reasons to own an Xbox 360. It's an exclusive game, it never came out on the PlayStation, and I think it's definitely worth a look. Obviously, there's a lot of high hopes for the new Fable game that should be coming out in 2026, but it's very hard to imagine that it's going to reach the same heights as Fable 2 did all the way back on the Xbox 360 in 2008. Of course, we can't talk about the Xbox 360 without Halo 3. This was the trilogy's epic finale, and it delivered so much more over Halo 2, which is still an amazing game, don't get me wrong. But Halo 3 just raised the bar even higher. That really perfected the series' vehicular combat with intelligent AI and massive battlefields. The graphics were a significant step up over Halo 2, and the campaign wrapped up Master Chief's saga with memorable levels, full co-op support, emotional highs, and that multiplayer that revolutionized console gaming. The Forge was introduced for custom maps and modes, the theater for replays and screenshots, file sharing and service records, and all these things would foster in a massive and vibrant Halo community that's still going strong to this day. The Halo control scheme was still on point as ever, the epic music in the game, and of course, it introduced features that are very much common in multiplayer gaming, such as proximity chat or prox chat. Halo 3 outsold expectations, and if there's one game that defined what Xbox Live was on the Xbox 360, it undoubtedly had to be Halo 3. Even today, it's still considered one of the best in the series with its campaign, and its social elements are still unmatched. Halo 3 is a masterpiece, and it really did define the Xbox 360 back in 2007. Now, I've always been a big fan of games that push art and minimalism, such as Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, and Eric Chahi's Another World. And 2010's Limbo on Xbox Live Arcade hit all the right notes for me. It was originally a timed exclusive published by Microsoft Game Studios on the Xbox 360, which would come out later on other platforms. The game's monochrome vibe was something that I'll never forget the first time I ever picked up and played it, and the physics-driven puzzles with crates and levers and gravity and the deadly traps that are trying to kill the main protagonist in the game, and the kind of trial and death aspect of the game where you kind of try things over and over, you keep dying, but eventually you'll figure it out and continue on. And this game wasn't a big game, but it was a very memorable one. You could finish it in about 3 to 4 hours of playtime if you didn't really know what you were doing. But I love the atmosphere of Limbo. The physics, the film grain, the fog, the lighting, the horror immersion. There was no HUD, no dialogue. There was lots of ambient sounds, and it really kind of built up that tension and dread. And the gore filter kind of blacked out all the deaths in the game. It was fantastic. It ran on a custom engine at 60 frames per second. And just like the best kind of minimalism games, it only had 2 buttons. One was to move and one was to jump. And that was it. And this game was incredible. I loved Limbo, and the follow-up Inside, which released later on, was just as good. But for me, Limbo really kind of captures the essence of what Xbox Live Arcade was in its peak, and I think it's one of the best games that I ever played on the 360, hands down. I think unfairly we associate good games with large file sizes, but this is not always the case, and Geometry Wars, which was a game that was only 14 megabytes, was one of the best Xbox Live Arcade games of all time. This twin-stick multi-direction shooter originally evolved from a 2003 minigame found in Project Gotham Racing 2, but eventually would see its own version on the Xbox 360 in the form of Geometry Wars Retro Evolved. This was such a fun shooter with that addictive gameplay where basically you're controlling a geometric ship with endless foes that are trying to kill you. You've got like these wanderers, these snake-looking things, you've got black holes, and it's in this kind of grid-style arena. You've got smart bombs that can clear the screen out. You can also earn extra lives. This was the quintessential retro-style arcade experience, running at 60 frames per second, 1080p, with leaderboards and achievements, of course. This was a $5 game on XBLA, and it hooked millions and millions of people. It's considered the most downloaded XBLA game ever, and it really put XBLA on the map as a service to be taken seriously. If you had your game on XBLA, there was the potential to make a lot of money on there, and Microsoft would promote XBLA with its Summer of Arcade, which featured new games almost every single week over multiple summers across multiple years. It was a really awesome time, and Geometry Wars Retro Evolved was really the first game that started it all. An incredible game, and still one that I go back and play every once in a while. I absolutely love it. Now, if we're talking about XBLA, Trials HD is one game that I'll never forget. Trials HD is a 2.5D motorcycle stunt racer, and it released in 2009 as a part of the Summer of Arcade 2 campaign, which was very successful for XBLA. And this was a fantastic game where your motorcycle rider had to kind of traverse a obstacle course of many, many different levels, and you had to really be precise with the throttle and the brake and the various controls to kind of battle the gravity spikes and explosions in the time trial modes and the skill modes. I can tell you that I spent hundreds of hours playing Trials HD, trying to get a better time on the leaderboard, trying to one-up my friends on the leaderboard. I was hopelessly addicted to this game with that one more go style gameplay where it was very easy just to restart a level. If you knew that it wasn't going to be quite right, you could just redo the level and start over again. It had addictive gameplay. The physics was incredible. There was over 50 tracks. There was an editor as well. We had 60 frames per second for the most part. There's definitely some slowdown that occurs when there are particle effects and post-processing going on, but it looked fantastic. It had achievements, of course, and DLC and sequels, but the original Trials HD, for me, I'll never forget it. It was an incredible experience. I think it was the best-selling one with over 2 million sales, and it's considered one of the best XBLA games ever, and I'm not one to disagree. Trials HD, for me, is definitely one of those games. Gears of War was one of the best reasons to own the Xbox 360, but for me, Gears of War 2, which released in 2008, really ramped up the cover shooter formula and pushed the series to greater heights. I'll never forget the chainsaw duels, the new vehicles, the Centaur tanks and the Reavers. There were new weapons in the game, the Gorgon Burst SMGs. Gears 2 also upped the ante in multiplayer with 10-player matches instead of 8 people, and it had 8 modes, including the Wingman 2v2, the Guardian Leader Protect, the submission bomb tags. There were bots for offline modes. There was horde modes as well, which was really series defining. It used Unreal Engine 3 and it really pushed 720p, 30 FPS, particle effects, destruction, physics, and the horde mode really pushed the hardware to its limits. The story arc of Dominic's family in the game, if you know, you know. I won't spoil it if you haven't played the game, but it's definitely an emotional ride and one that I simply won't forget. For me, it's the best in the series. Other people may disagree, but it did receive a 93 Metacritic. It got a Game of the Year Contender award, calling it the best action game with over 6 million sold. Gears of War 2 is the peak of the Gears of War series for me, and again, a game that I just simply won't forget on the Xbox 360. Now, there were a couple of other notable mentions for me. The first one has to be Rainbow Six Vegas. I love this tactical shooter because it really made the Rainbow Six series so much more accessible and toned down the amount of buttons and controls that you needed to memorize in order to play these games. There was so much detail put into Rainbow Six Vegas, but the most important part was it was fun to play. Sending your squad to breach and clear rooms was so addictive, and you always felt in control of your squad mates, positioning them around the map, and the game never got old. And it was set in Vegas as well, with the casinos and the bright lights. The graphics were fantastic for the time, and the Xbox 360 really was the perfect place to play this game. It's one game that I simply won't forget. Another game has to be Marble Blast Ultra. Now, this was an earlier XBLA game where you must control a customizable marble through 60 physics-based levels. It was addictive fun with tight controls, clean graphics, and the cheap price made it an instant classic. I think for me, this was one of the first games that I was very sad to hear when it was delisted, and it can no longer be purchased, but it's one game that I will always remember and go back to every so often. Thankfully, I still have this game tied to my Xbox Live account. Mirror's Edge, released in 2008 and was developed by DICE and published by EA. This was a first-person parkour game with wall running, slides, vaults, pole swings, and it felt exhilarating to play. It all looked so clean with its primary colors, letting the player know where they should be going at all times without holding your hand. The game promoted evasion and escape over combat, and its 9 chapters, the game would build tension with an excellent story. Mirror's Edge is the best in the series, and it's a shame that the franchise is another dormant one that has never seen a revival. Now, it's not exclusive to the Xbox 360, but it's one game that I'll simply never forget. But they're just my picks of the most memorable Xbox 360 games. Of course, you're going to have your own thoughts and opinions. I may have missed something that you think is one of the most memorable 360 games, and that's what makes the Xbox 360 so incredible. There were so many amazing games that it's very difficult just to kind of label them all in one particular episode. If I was doing that, this would be a 2 or 3 hour episode, but I did want to illustrate and highlight the Xbox 360 games that kind of left their mark on me personally. Of course, you may have your own thoughts and opinions. Let me know what they are in the comments below. As always, we are going to leave it here for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.